So we have a bit of a breaking news update for you, and it pertains to position within Indian cricket, or more specifically Indian women's cricket, that, truth be told, has needed a little bit of filling in quite some time, because the Indian women's cricket team, believe it or not, has been playing without a head coach for quite a long time, if I'm not wrong.
I think almost a couple years now.
Exactly. That is terrible.
That is a long time to go without a head coach, and not a good look for Indian women's cricket, because we've been talking about all this development and all this growth, all the while we don't have a head coach.
Exactly. So a bit of the breaking news update is that position, of course, you remember that the BCCI did put out a tender and application saying that the job is there, and now we can reveal exclusively the 3 candidates who have been shortlisted for the interview, and we'll also tell you the date on which the interviews are set. First, the candidates. You have John Lewis, who is currently working as the head coach of the UP Warriors WPL franchise, and has a vast experience of coaching, not just women's cricket but cricket in general. Correct me if I'm wrong, but he was the England coach at one point for the bowling.
England bowling coaches, and England bowling coach, and he worked with the likes of
Jofra Archer,
Ben
right?
Stokes, and plenty of England bowlers. And also he was working with one of the domestic sides, in county
England,
cricket in England. So he's someone who comes in with a lot of experience when it comes to cricket in general, not just women's cricket. He's played, he's kind of coached at a very high level. Of course, if you're England's coach, that's a big job. And I think he was also the bowling coach of South African team.
Oh, so he has a lot of experience. The other 2 candidates, and we'll discuss their pros and cons. So John Lewis is the only, let's say, overseas candidate.
Yes.
The others are Tushar Arothe, who you'd remember has had a stint as the women's team coach in the past, and Amol Mazumdar, who recently has been coaching Mumbai, but of course has had also a lot of coaching experience. Now, we'll go into the other 2 candidates. We spoke about John Lewis. We've seen him in action as well with the UP Warriors, WPL, someone who does have a lot of experience when it comes to not just women's cricket coaching, but coaching in general. Same though can be said about Tushar Arothe, and for that matter, even Amol Mazumdar.
I mean, yes, Tushar Arothe has been...
he was the women's coach, the head coach of the women's team in around 2017-18. At that point, he resigned. But at that point, there was also a lot of rumors which essentially said that he was forced out because he'd had disagreements with some of the star players in the women's team. Now, so if that was really the case, seems a bit weird they're going back to him now, considering a lot of those star players who were star players back then are also star players now.
I mean, a lot of star players have retired as of
That's
now,
also
because
true.
when we look at the likes of who are in the leadership arena, let's look at Mithali Raj, Julian Goswami, and a few others who have now retired. But when we look at Tushar Arothe, of course, he's been with the Indian women's team before, and he's well versed with how the management works when it comes to the women's cricket area. But also Indian women's cricket team had a falling out with Romesh Pawar as well
On multiple occasions,
but then of course this is what led to us having a huge void when it comes to the head coach. But now Tushar Arothe is back in the deal. He's back in the scenario, and let's look at what plays out, because the interview is
on 30th of June, which is 2 days from now, which is on Friday. So Friday will be when the interviews take place. And Amol Mazumdar, I found very interested in that candidate. He's had, let's say, a pretty nomadic career when it comes to his coaching. I think he was assistant coach of Rajasthan Royals at one point. He was the batting coach for South Africa at one point. He's also coached the Netherlands cricket team. So a lot of...
In all 3 of those countries or for those teams, he was the batting coach. He's a very batting-centric coach, of course.
Obviously.
He's been the head batting coach for all the countries that you listed, all the teams that you listed. And I think he'll be a very important part, because he's been someone who has been very well versed with the domestic circuit as well.
Exactly.
And when these coaches are coming in from the domestic level, it somehow makes a difference.
Yes, it does.
I believe, because right now, as of now, when we talk about women's cricket, it is sort of on a similar level to where Indian domestic cricket is.
Correct.
Men's cricket.
The men's domestic.
I think we can draw that comparison. But what I mean to say is that when a coach is coming in from the domestic level, they know these players. They know they've had this exposure to the domestic cricket. When you talk about an overseas coach, they might not necessarily know all the players in the domestic area. Of course, that's homework to be done after he's
after assuming John Lewis gets appointed.
But I think it's a great opportunity for Amol Muzumdar as well as the Indian cricket team. But also, if we talk about people who coaches who could have made a difference, Charlotte Edwards was being there were a lot of speculations about Charlotte Edwards coming in, and I think that could have been a great deal for India, because she's been coaching for a great while now, and she has such a huge legacy in women's cricket. I think that could have done a lot for us. But then again, she's already with MI, and she has a lot of other contacts as well when we come to BBL or the Rachel Hayhoe Flynn Trophy and the Charlotte Edwards Cup as well, of course. So Charlotte Edwards is out of the picture now, but let's focus on the three: John Lewis.
John Lewis could be an
Tushar
interesting
Arote
candidate.
and Amol Muzumdar.
Yeah, for Amol Muzumdar, you're talking about that domestic point. I think we've seen that to a much smaller extent. You can say when, say, someone like Chandrakant Pandit became a KKR coach, you saw the kind of performances that were driven up by some of the domestic players, because he's someone who commands the respect of anyone who's been on that circuit. So I think that's one advantage, and I think one of the bigger problems with the Indian women's team has kind of been integrating fresher talent, because more often than not, due to a real lack of a domestic system, you're kind of blooding them at the international level, which is not ideal all the time. You see someone like Jemima Rodriguez. She's someone who was a dasher as a young player, but she's kind of had to adapt a different role, become almost an anchor. Similarly, you'll see someone like Richa Verma, also, or Shefali for that matter, all dashers, but sometimes at the international level, it can be tough to make that step up, and that's where you want someone who can help them, guide them. Someone like Amol Muzumdar could be perfect for that.
That's why you need someone who's well versed with the domestic cricket of India, and who knows what players are doing well in the domestic area, because that's your talent, that's your bench.
That's your talent pool.
Yeah, that's your talent pool, and if you don't know how to utilize that, you're going to be stuck with the same team forever, which will possibly stagnate.
Yeah, we've seen that happen actually. You have seen that happen more often than not, where the same players are playing, and no disrespect to any of them, but if you want to be a successful team, you need bench strength, you need talent coming in all the time. I think that's going to be the big challenge for whichever of these three people does end up getting the job, is bringing in or integrating that talent, then ensuring or overseeing like a revamp of sorts of the domestic field, because if there's one thing that the WPL also proved, is that your domestic talent pool is thin. It is thin.
I mean, I don't know, I sort of disagree. I think they haven't been given a platform yet to kind of showcase the talent.
Yes, correct. And that WPL was that platform, but if you need to be doing well at a platform like that, you need strong domestic cricket as well. It's not necessarily there, and that's not a criticism, that's the sad reality, and that's something they need to work on, which is what I'm saying, whoever is the next head coach, that's also a challenge. How do you then make all of that or bring all of that in sync? The opportunities from domestic cricket to WPL, then potentially the international team.
You need someone who's going to be looking at every single aspect of the game when it comes to women's cricket. You're going to be looking at every single level when it comes to it. So Amol Muzumdar, for that very reason, is going to be a great pick. John Lewis, of course, for all his international credentials. Because he's been coaching the men's England team.
He's coached UP Warriors.
Or was that
No, that was John Lewis.
Okay, he's coached the UP Warriors, which was predominantly also a team that was filled with domestic talent. UP Warriors, I think, was one of the very, very few.
They didn't have a lot of bigwig Indians.
Yeah, exactly. They didn't have the big stars when it comes to it. They were really focused on domestic talent, and Mithali Raj was also one of the panel.
She was one of the mentors. Yes.
So you can tell that he also would have had a great exposure to Indian domestic cricket, women's cricket to be precise. So John Lewis is also someone who's coming in with a great, like a sort of mixture of both knowing what Indian women's domestic cricket is like, and also
what it needs,
and also having a huge legacy of coaching international cricket teams as well.
Absolutely. And of course, if you're looking at someone who's a continuity candidate, you can say Tushar Arote really fits the bill. So I think three very interesting choices. Who would be your favorite? Well, you can let us know that in the comments, and please don't forget, like, share, subscribe, tap the bell so you know when we're going live or uploading a new video, and also don't forget Sportsbook app.
To download the Sportsbook app.
Download that. Follow us across socials and stay tuned. Lots more coming your way. For now though, from Gargi and me, it's goodbye.